Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Made in Bartlett, a program dedicated to the businesses that drive our economy in Bartlett and the surrounding area. We want to start off by thanking First South Financial for being our underwriter, making this podcast possible. We're joined today by Ken Birdsong, someone that has been involved in the medical device industry almost his entire life. And we're going to learn a lot about the industry, but we're also going to learn a lot about Ken Birdsong. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you joining us.
Yep.
I've known you, I guess, I don't know, going on 10 years or more, but
At least.
but I know a little bit about your background. I know that you've been involved in the medical device industry for quite some time. In fact, it's probably the only career you've had, is it not?
Principally, yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Out of college. Yep.
Okay. And did you go straight to Smith & Nephew?
I had a period where I worked for a greeting card company, and then we got recruited to then Richards Manufacturing.
Oh, so you worked for Richards.
I did, and then Richards Medical, and then Smith & Nephew.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, let's delve a little bit into Richards Medical because
All right.
Richards Medical, do you know a little bit about their history when they got started in Memphis?
I do.
Okay. Tell
Yep.
folks about Richards Medical because that is the company that really spurred the growth in medical device in Memphis, is it not?
It is, actually. There's a little bit of a funny story about how it began, at least the way I understood it was. J. Don Richards was the founder of Richards Manufacturing, and he was the nephew of the Zimmer family.
Okay, we're getting interesting now.
And Zimmer, of course, was part of the Warsaw, Indiana group, and he met a girl in New Orleans. Mr. Richards did. And she told him the furthest north I'm going to go if we get married is Memphis. And he said, okay, that's where we'll be, and that's where I'll start my company. So that's the backstory behind J. Don Richards and the Zimmer family.
Now, Zimmer still exists.
Very much so.
And
Zimmer Biomet now.
And okay, they merged with Biomed. And
That's
they're one of the, if not the largest orthopedic manufacturer in the world.
They are that. Slightly behind them would be Stryker.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, Stryker.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yep.
So Richards, he was in New Orleans, married a New Orleans girl. He wanted to start his own company? Or?
He did.
Okay.
It was a soft goods company. At the time, so was very much Zimmer, and braces and splints. And he opened his first business downtown in Memphis. I can't recall the location, but it was somewhere near the old Commercial Appeal facility. And that's how it all started. And then he built the facility out on Brooks Road, which was way out in the county at the time. And he occupied the land that was a nursery, and that's where it began on Coughlin Drive and Brooks Road.
Huh. And so I don't know if we want to give dates because that'd get
Yeah, sure, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so Richards, what year was that? Do you remember when it?
They moved, the year they moved, you talking about?
No, when they got started, when they got incorporated in Memphis.
I think it was 1962, if I remember.
Oh, I thought it went back further than that.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. But now, Campbell's Clinic, were they a factor?
They very much were. He started his sort of the beginnings of soft goods and the reconstruction and the management of wound care with Campbell Clinic. And then Campbell, and of course, evolved, and so did, at the time, Richards. And then it became Richards Medical, and they dropped the manufacturing side of that name.
Okay.
And then 1986, Smith & Nephew acquired Richards Medical.
Now, when did you come in?
So I graduated from the University of Memphis. I went away for college and played a little football and decided that I was not the next Brett Favre or Joe Namath.
You played in the NFL?
No, gosh.
Oh, okay.
I decided I was not going to be that.
Oh, okay.
So I left college, and I was a quarterback, and decided it was best for me to pursue my education because that was going to be a more meaningful future for me than football.
Okay.
So my brother did play professional football for Kansas City Chiefs.
Really?
He's a lot bigger than me. He was a big lineman. Played for Marv Levy, and Marv was more famously known for losing 4 Super Bowls for the Buffalo Bills.
They went to 4 Super Bowls?
Yes, he did.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so I began my career at Smith & Nephew in 1981 after graduating from the University of Memphis.
Okay.
So, and my love has always been producing parts and manufacturing, and basically the importance I feel like the role plays of manufacturing as a whole,
Yeah.
not just in Memphis, but globally, the footprint.
Yeah. So it was Richards Medical that you went to work for.
Well, at the time, Richards Manufacturing.
Okay.
And then 2-3 years later, it became Richards Medical. And then in 1986, Smith & Nephew acquired them.
Okay. So when you went to work for them in 81, what was their primary products?
There was a very large veterinary products line that they had at the time, and trauma.
Veterinary?
Yes. They were the largest veterinary products producer globally.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
And
what were they making?
They made hip joints for canine products,
Really?
plating, all types of screws, basically the same constructs that you'd use to address trauma conditions for humans, virtually the same for veterinary products. Small plates, small screws, hip joints. As a matter of fact, I have a keychain that's got actually a compression hip screw plate for a dog.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd never heard that story before.
That was very much the product line.
So were you involved in that product?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So now where did you come in? Were you on the design side or?
Well, my original responsibilities were in operations, and I was part of the planning group, so I planned production. And then they asked me to take over quality systems in manufacturing. So I was the quality manager and the certified quality engineer, and managed the operational functions for inbound, outbound quality systems at Smith & Nephew, or then Richards. And then they said, okay, well, you seem to do okay with that. Would you take over production? So I said, well, sure. So I was responsible for CNC production. And then I evolved from there and was responsible for group management, restructured manufacturing a couple of different times. And the last point where I first met you, John, was we were working on a project called Workforce 2000. In 1996, I began a journey to transform manufacturing so that we were a team-based structure. And that's eventually what we did. We had 26 production teams, and we did a work and reward system redesign. At the time, it was called Re-Engineering the Corporation. So I read a book. I thought, we can do this at Smith & Nephew, and that's what we did.
Really?
Yep.
So is the veterinarian line, that's gone though?
They vacated that in the middle 80s and concentrated on trauma. And then towards the end of the 80s, they felt like that we needed to be more concentrated in recon products, which would be hip and knee and shoulders. And that became really the thrust of the company for its growth. And that growth segment carried them through, but they still had a concentration at trauma. And the intermedullary nailing system developed by Doctors Russell and Taylor at Campbell Clinic revolutionized long bone fracture because the big issue back in the day was that when you had a comminuted fracture of the femur, for instance, like a high energy trauma, like a car wreck, is you couldn't align the fracture sites very effectively. So this nailing system was developed in concert with Campbell Clinic and Doctors Russell and Taylor, aligned the fracture using the intermedullary canal. Previously, you would have to resect, open the femur, and put side plates with screws. And not only did you have a poor healing rate because of that, but you had non-unions, which is basically the fracture moves and you don't get complete healing. And you also get leg shortening as well. And that's one of the big issues. So Smith & Nephew was the first to create a fully closed nail. Helmetica, which was a company acquired by Stryker, had an open nail. So when you drove it down the intermedullary canal, the screw holes started twisting, and surgeons could not find the distal holes to put screws in to lock that nail in place. So Smith & Nephew had a closed nail, and we had targeting systems that allowed us to find that distal screw hole and the proximal screw holes as well.
Well, that's a lot of detail there.
Well, it's probably more than you really bargained for.
Now, you said Smith & Nephew. Was this actually Smith & Nephew by then, or was it still Richards?
Yeah, it was Smith & Nephew. 86 Smith & Nephew acquired
Okay.
Richards.
Okay, so let's bring in the Bartlett piece.
Okay.
Okay, so like you mentioned, Richards was on Brooks Avenue.
Brooks Road, yep.
Brooks Road.
That's right.
Down by the airport. and Dr. John Shea enters the picture, right?
Well, Dr. Shea was involved in the 80s, actually, and we had a otology products group at the time, and Dr. Shea was very involved in creating inner ear replacement structures. So those little components allowed people to regain their hearing that they had lost because of deterioration of the bone structures in their inner ear. So Dr. Shea and then Smith & Nephew decided we need to separate the otological group from trauma and recon, and that's what started. They were the first occupants of the Bartlett commercial development area.
Right.
And that's where the otology group moved out there, and that was in the late 80s.
Were you involved in that?
I was not. That was not part of my division. I stayed with trauma and recon, and of course, I do know a lot of those people.
Yeah. Now, when it moved out to Bartlett, it was still part of Richards.
It was.
And then when Smith & Nephew purchased Richards, they changed over to Smith & Nephew.
Correct. And it remained part of that group. And then, as such, was until the late 90s, actually. It was part of, ENT was part of Smith & Nephew.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went through a restructuring and brought in the McKinsey group, and they decided it was best to spin that group out. And then it was
McKinsey told y'all.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Spent a lot of money to tell us everything that everybody else already
they
knew.
ain't cheap.
No, they're not. And we also sold DonJoy, which was a bracing division in California. We sold DonJoy at the time, it was Encore. And Encore acquired DonJoy from us as well. So we de-divisionalized and sold off some of the divisions.
Well, what's interesting about Richards and then Smith & Nephew, but the Bartlett facility, the ENT division, I know that Grace Medical was, you could say, was a spinoff from that.
Yes.
And also, was Odyssey a spinoff?
Well, actually, one of the managers of the product groups inside of Bartlett started his own company, which was Odyssey Medical.
Okay.
And they produced and had patents on a punctal implant, which is a port in the corner of your eye. When you blink, you wick materials, keeps your eye from being dry. Well, sometimes humans, that port becomes sealed up with tissue. And they come in with a dilator and puncture that membrane and put a little port. So you'll see people that have literally a little white dot in the corner of their eye. That's the procedure that the person I acquired Odyssey from, he created that product and patented it and started his own company. So yes, it was sort of a spin out.
And Bartlett, at one time, was the world's largest producer of that product?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because of the patent structure he had.
Yeah.
And he sold that to a Boston private equity group.
Okay. So now that product is no longer manufactured in Bartlett either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's in Boston. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's manufactured in Boston.
So we're going to come back to Odyssey in a minute because that's the company that you own. And but Odyssey, like we were saying, is a spinoff really from Richards, Smith & Nephew, and all that.
Yep.
So you know the industry in Memphis pretty well. You know the industry worldwide because y'all are. It's not that huge an industry where you don't know what's going on.
That's true.
So kind of give the viewers a kind of a quick overview of companies that you feel were directly responsible, like Medtronic, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, software data and all that stuff. So can you give our viewers a kind of an overview of what spun off from Richards and Smith & Nephew?
Well, you mentioned Medtronic. It obviously started actually as Danek Medical.
Yeah.
And then it became Sophomore Danek when they merged with the French company Sophomore.
Right.
And of course, then it was taken private by Medtronic. It was actually on New York Stock Exchange. Sophomore Danek was.
Oh, was
it? Traded publicly.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And of course, as you talked about, Wright Medical was not a spinoff of Smith & Nephew, but they were a locally orthopedic-based company as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's a couple there that are mentioned. And if you sort of press on, there were collateral things that occurred, and more spin-outs occurred with various other parties. There's the new company in Memphis, Theromicro. That came from Into Bones. Into Bones came from folks at Smith & Nephew. So it's It's just seemingly the derivatives of products and companies and people
Right. Right.
concentrated in the Memphis area.
Right.
So,
Okay, so let's go to Odyssey, which is your company. You purchased Odyssey, and by the way, folks, if you don't know Odyssey is right behind Lenny's. They probably
on Brother Boulevard, yes.
Brother Boulevard,
yes.
You know where Lenny's is there in the corner of 64 and Brother Boulevard. Odyssey is right behind that, right?
Yep. The corners on Brother Boulevard and Adrian Place.
Oh, okay, Adrian Place,
right there on that corner. Yes.
So you acquired that when?
Yeah, so I acquired that in 2014 from a former colleague of the E&T division at Smith & Nephew, and he basically wanted to divest of that business and retire. So knowing him as I did from my days at Smith & Nephew, we had lunch and we consummated the deal, and the rest is history. So that's how it all began. And prior to that, though, I left Smith & Nephew and went to work at Royal Bank of Scotland private equity group that was owned by Royal Bank, and managed international business and had operating units in Mexico and 4 in the United States and 3 in Europe. So I traveled a lot, saw a lot in terms of the imprint that med device had globally and what a difference it made. So I decided to come back to Memphis, acquired Odyssey as basically a captive manufacturer for a branded products company that we created. We sold that branded products company to Don Joy Orthopedics in 2019. And then I took Odyssey back to being a contract manufacturer at that point.
Is that what Odyssey is, a contract manufacturer?
That's correct.
Okay, explain to the viewers what that is in the medical device world.
Well, it's interesting that most med device companies don't principally produce too much of their own product. They work with companies like mine, and we produce the product and laser mark their logo and their part numbers, and even put it in packaging that has their label on it and ship it to them, and they sell it as if they manufacture.
Okay. So, and I don't know if you're at liberty to say who some of your clients are, but I would assume then that your clients, you're making these products for your clients. There's other companies doing the same thing?
There are similar companies to ours in the Memphis area, and of course globally as well, that do this. So the imprint, like I said, the tentacles are far-reaching with regard to med device, and Memphis is a hub, just like Warsaw, Indiana is a hub. In the recent years, things have sort of moved outside the market of Memphis into other areas to the West Coast, and people have decided to go to Colorado and started businesses there, and we have customers there, and we have them all over. We're a global footprint. We have customers in Brazil and Mexico, as well as in Europe.
So, okay, so the products that you're making, is it orthopedic related?
Well, principally it is. Orthopedics is sort of divided into various channels. Spine, of course, is an element of orthopedics. And then there's foot and ankle, and there's extremities, and then there's basic trauma products, and then reconstruction. Those are the main sectors that are part of orthopedics care.
Right. So everything dealing with the bones primarily.
Primarily reconstruction. And then, of course, there's biologic science as well.
And what is that exactly?
Well, one of the things I've concentrated on is the fact that there's only so many things you can reconstruct or mend together when it comes to structural bone. Is how do you enhance the healing rate through biologic science? I call this soft science. Hard science to me is what all the manufacturing used to be in the Memphis area. It was bone screws and plates and sort of reconstructive items that put people back together. Well, the industry has moved from that element, and it's still a big part of it. But the healing rate and the ability to ensure healing is where I say biologic science is moving. And it's important to recognize the fact that not just biologic science, but what is necessary to heal tissue, for instance, or regenerate tissue, or regenerate cartilage. Those are the soft sciences I believe orthopedics is moving quickly into, utilizing artificial intelligence.
Can you regenerate cartilage?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because when your knee gives out, or your shoulder or whatever, or your hip, their doctors are saying your cartilage or whatever has given out. You bone on bone.
That's correct.
So now they're saying, okay, maybe instead of having to put in a new knee, we can get that cartilage back?
Well, the difference, though, is we can grow cellular structure and tissue in a petri dish. But can we grow it such that their body receives that, much like a blood transfusion? Your body sometimes rejects that blood structure, just like it would if you put metallic implants in or PEEK components. Your body says, I don't like that. That's not me. So it rejects that. So one of the big challenges is the ability to regenerate the cartilage so that the body will receive it and it work collectively correct. And I say collectively because you've got to have a lot of structure with regard to the DNA and the biologic science to support the ability for, almost like you would think about growing grass. You've got to prepare the bed material for the grass to grow effectively. Well, you have to prepare the structure to be able to receive that transplanted material.
So this is complementing.
Very much complementary.
Okay. So you still may get the knee, but you're going to get this other process as well.
Well, it's usually a segment before you actually have to restructure the knee by resecting bone. So in other words, there are biologic science today where synovial joint fluid therapy, for instance, which is an injection to replace the synovial fluid that you've lost that keeps that cartilage soft and malleable so it doesn't harden. That's the key. That's why when you tear cartilage, it pulls up, it loses its blood supply, hardens, and then it starts scratching your bone. So that's why they go in and take that out. Well, you've got to be able to prepare that surface. So you would have this as basically an adjunct before you actually go in and resect bone and put in all those metal components, metal parts.
Viewers, I don't know if you knew you was going to get an in-depth review of all this stuff, but this guy is definitely doing that. And that's great, Ken. I appreciate that. I've learned some stuff here.
Well, I must admit, it makes getting up in the morning, putting your feet on the floor worth doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've been in it all your life too, pretty much. So, this is your life. So speaking of your life and speaking of the industry, where do you see this industry going? I know that there's been, I've talked to a lot of people who've been in the industry like yourself, and they talk about the way it was back when they first got in and the way it is now. What trend, what direction is this industry going in? And what do you see as the future, say in the next 10 to 15 years?
One of the challenges, I think, is as part of the board of directors for the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council, I think it's important for us to recognize hardware manufacturing is only a part of orthopedic care. As I mentioned earlier, the fact that biologic science and what I call soft science is critical to the development of the industry. If we don't understand that, we're going to fall further and further behind globally.
And it's becoming more and more essential.
Absolutely it is. Okay. And then to segue and segment that to some degree is artificial intelligence and recognizing the displacement of routine and redundant task structures with robotics and artificial intelligence. And that is moving very quickly as we think about the way artificial intelligence is designed and the fact that, you and I are conversing now, but I'm looking to the left and I can see who's sitting to our left. That is the neural network that our brains have the capacity to process. Well, computers today are binary. Either they're 1 or 0, and you string together a bunch of 1 and 0s to make, say, the word blue. Well, a neural network, that artificial intelligence, and that's what's called quantum computing, that movement is quickly gaining speed because of the processing power. Soon we will have the ability of a robot to think and reason on its own and make conscious decisions. And you will see this evolving at a rapid rate.
And you talking about in surgery?
Well, actually last month in the country of India, med device companies, there was the first totally autonomous robotic orthopedic replacement surgery occurred with 3 patients in India last month. So in other words, the robot with laser and various instruments performed the surgery to replace the knee components of humans without a surgeon and without technicians.
Without technicians?
There
was nobody in the room?
No, there were people in the room. But there was no technician that touched the patient to complete that surgery.
They actually implanted it?
They actually
The robotics?
resected the tissue, basically opened the knee. Of course, it was in a fixated position, made the necessary laser cuts, and then the saw, there was an apparatus on a turret. Saw comes in, makes the cuts that a surgeon would create, and then went through the process of placing the knee and then going through the various functions.
Well, this sounds like science fiction, Ken.
Well, I must admit, I'm not ready for it. I'm going to let them practice. That's good.
I've practiced a lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But see, we're already there.
Yeah.
We're already there with the robotic skills and abilities. So it doesn't take much to leap forward to think that that's going to be just like driverless vehicles. I was in Phoenix about 2 months ago at a conference, and Waymo has 1,000 fully autonomous taxis operating in Phoenix. And it's phenomenal to watch them operate. So if a taxi can navigate through vision technology it possesses and its ability to compute decision-making, then it's not a far reach to think that robotic surgery is very near in our future, because the number of surgeons is limited as well. That's another constraint. So there's statistics about the number of people that are going to have a knee going forward or hip.
Yeah.
And there's too many of us baby boomers that's going to be a requirement for.
Absolutely.
And there has not been a change substantially in the number of surgeons that have been board certified in the last 15 years.
Now,
Same
go over that again.
So there was a study done by the U.S. Department of Health in 2004 that projected forward the number of knee replacements necessary in 2030 in the United States at 3.2 million knee replacements that would be required. Back in 2004, there were about 20,000 orthopedic surgeons. And in 2030, there's going to be 22,000 surgeons. But the number of knee replacements changed by 5 times. So 700,000 knee replacements back in 2004, 3.2 million in 2030, but only with 2,000 more surgeons available. That's why robotic surgery is not just a nice thing. It's going to be a necessity, or else we're all going to be in a line waiting to get our knee replaced. We'll probably be in a wheelchair, non-ambulatory. When you sit in a wheelchair, bad things happen biologically.
Yeah.
And that's when your quality of life diminishes.
Because when you come out of that knee surgery, I know that they want you to start walking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned the GMNDC, the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that, because that is an organization that was formed back about 2014. You're a board member of that. You're also a board member of the Bartlett Chamber. Right. So you're wearing 2 hats in that regard. But the Greater Memphis Medical Device Council was brought about primarily, initially, to address the workforce issue. But it's kind of branched off from that. Well, it's not branched off. That's still one of its primary missions. But it's looking at doing other things as well. So could you talk a little bit about that?
As briefly as I can. I think one of the challenges is what I said to the board is understanding the necessity of soft science, because we've been hardware driven, if you think about orthopedics, for the last 45 years, 50 years. This ability to heal before replacement or reconstruction is necessary, is where it should be. So we need to integrate pharmacological solutions into who we are as a Greater Memphis medical device. So the device is not just hardware. It needs to be soft science solutions and biologic science. That's what I said to the board, and that's going to be important going forward. If we're going to be successful, if we're going to evolve and not be an industry that's a dinosaur.
Well, what was the feedback?
I think they recognize that. I'm not sure we know how to get there. I think we have to integrate those pharmacological solutions and those companies as part of the segue. And companies like Smith & Nephew and Medtronic and others, Stryker, have to start that journey, if they haven't already, integrating. For instance, Baxter Pharmaceutical used to own Zimmer. But in the late 80s, early 90s, they divested of that because they wanted to concentrate on pharmacy solutions and didn't want to concentrate on hardware solutions like Zimmer. So I think the merger of those two is necessary going forward. But, that's just my opinion.
Well, your opinion carries some weight, Ken.
Well, we'll see if it does.
So and about the industry, we've been talking about, of course, the medical device industry. And I don't think we mentioned the fact that Memphis area is one of the heaviest concentrations in the country, is it not?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Here in Warsaw are the two. But you remember Sharing Plow used to have a large presence here in Memphis, and they were a pharmaceutical company.
Right.
And that has diminished somewhat. So the chances are that we could regain a position there are reasonable. I think if you look at the Raleigh, Durham area of North Carolina, that's sort of the triangle for pharmacy and pharmaceutical development. I don't think there's too far a stretch to believe that we couldn't regain some of that relationship that we used to be here with Sharing Plow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's similar to me. There's a couple of companies in Memphis, either startups or whatever, that cannot. Well, Accredo, of course. Accredo is just pharmaceutical distribution.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a few other companies that might have spun off from that.
There possibly are. I'm not as well versed on that industry, honestly. But I believe understanding the merger of those two as an integrated solution is going to be important. That's for not just for orthopedics, but for pharmaceutical development as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So soft science.
Well, Ken, we've taken up a lot of your time, and it's time for us to close this out. And Mark over there is he didn't even give me the sign. He's about to fall asleep, aren't you? Oh, he's pointing at the clock now. But yes, we've used up our time. And Ken, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come by and share some of your wisdom with us.
Yeah.
And folks, we are going to make a wrap of this. And again, we appreciate First South Financial for underwriting this podcast, and thank Mark Thompson and his team for making this production possible. So with that, folks, we will, are you going to put an applause noise in this, Mark? Anyway, folks, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.
Thank you.